It's time now for our 360 round. We're discussing the EV market today. Joining us now, Joseph Vellone, the CEO of ChargeScape. Joseph, thanks for taking the time to be with us. I'd love to start, before we talk more broadly about the sector, to just get some of your thoughts on this article we're seeing from the Wall Street Journal about Tesla reportedly encouraging its suppliers to not use any China-based parts or China-created parts for any of its U.S. cars.
Well, I think it's part of a broader trend that we're seeing with American automakers really doubling down on American supply chains in response to things like tariffs, but also broader concerns about national security, cybersecurity, data privacy as well. I think we've seen in other sectors some problems or concerns about spyware hidden in Chinese electronics and software. And so I don't think it comes as a surprise that Tesla's doing this, and I would expect other automakers to follow suit.
And you say in some of the notes that you sent over that you still view EVs as some of the best deals in the market, even though we saw these federal tax credits expire. What's driving that continued affordability in your view?
Yeah, I think there's a few things. First of all, automakers have done a great job at driving down the cost of EVs simply from getting better at manufacturing. So I think a really good example is the Nissan Leaf, which MSRPs for less than $30,000. Compare that to the average purchase price of a combustion-powered car of about $50,000, according to Kelley Blue Book, and you see tremendous value. I think on leases as well, automakers are getting really creative with financing terms. We're seeing a lot of all-electric EVs being offered for lease around the $200 to $250 per month mark. Cars like the Mustang Mach-E from Ford, the Prologue EV from Honda.
And so you mentioned those leases. We've seen some really aggressive lease deals from some of those names you mentioned, Ford, Nissan, Honda. How sustainable do you think that these discounts are? And also, what does it tell us about consumer appetite?
Well, look, certainly, I think we're seeing Americans vote with their wallets. And Bloomberg just came out with a report that EV sales in 2025 are expected to be even higher than they were in 2024. And this is in response to the value that automakers are offering, not only with MSRP, but I think we're kind of entering a second phase now in the EV industry where consumers are also considering sort of long-term cost of ownership beyond just the sticker price. And of course, the biggest thing apart from owning a car is filling up the car, right? Whether that's with gasoline or whether that's with electricity, if you're driving an EV. And automakers are partnering actually with utilities and energy companies across the country to offer some really interesting discounts on at-home charging. So just for example, in Texas, automakers like Ford have partnered with TXU Energy, which is the largest energy company in Texas, to offer 100% free at-home charging, 18 hours a day, 365 days a year. In New York, automakers like BMW have partnered with Con Edison, which is the utility that serves the greater New York City area, to offer customers an average of about $500 cash back per year, simply for scheduling their car to charge during off-peak hours. I think one of the really interesting things now is we're seeing automakers offer vehicle-to-grid capability. So actually the ability to export power from your EV and sell it back to the grid. So automakers like Nissan are doing this in California. They've partnered with Pacific Gas and Electric, the utility there, to offer consumers $4,500 cash just for hooking up their EV battery to the grid. And then they can make over $2,000 a year for selling some of that electricity back to the power grid. So this is really helping to reduce the total cost of ownership of an EV beyond just the sticker price.
So we have those incentives there, but one risk that has been brought up multiple times as we continue this AI conversation and this infrastructure data center build out here is that that's going to drive electricity prices higher. So if and when that happens, how does that affect the economics of owning an EV?
Yeah, absolutely. I think AI demand and data center demand is definitely driving up electricity prices. We're seeing that across the country. Now, that does make the incentive programs that some utilities are offering for EV charging even more enticing, and I think even more important. Again, if you can get all of your EV charging done at home for free, you don't really have to worry about the increase in power prices. I think what's really interesting as well is we are seeing some automakers and their customers kind of turn this on its head, though. And I just want to share an example out in California, where Nissan actually has partnered with the utility Silicon Valley Power, and they're actually having their electric vehicles export power back to power data centers. And so Nissan EV drivers are actually engaging in this energy market arbitrage, taking advantage of these high power prices, selling power back to the grid or to data centers when they need it, when electricity is expensive, and actually charging and refilling their EV batteries using free rooftop solar power that they generate at home. And so it is really interesting, actually, sort of seeing this spike in electricity prices actually turning into a real benefit for EV drivers who have got the vehicles and the equipment needed to turn this into a revenue generating opportunity.
And Joseph, given all of these moving pieces that we've talked about, some of the incentives, the expiration of some and other further incentives, also depending on what state you live in, some of this lease affordability, potential grid strain, electricity pricing off, what is your outlook for EV adoption over the next 12 to 18 months? And also, where does the U.S. stand in that race versus, China and Europe?
Well, certainly, I think we're going to start to see a little bit of a rebound from the repeal of the tax credit in Q3. I think we're seeing a little bit of a cooling off maybe in Q4 as consumers race to purchase or lease an EV before the tax credit was repealed. But we are expecting to see that recover in 2026. I think when you start thinking about some of the Chinese electric vehicles that are out in the market today, there's a few things that kind of come to mind. I think, as I mentioned before, the way that consumers are really kind of looking at more than just the sticker price, right? And kind of thinking about total cost of ownership. And certainly an advantage that American automakers like Ford and GM, Stellantis have is that they've engineered their EVs for the American power grid from day one, right? These vehicles are built to seamlessly just plug into the utility power grid, automatically optimize for the cheapest off-peak electricity, and in some cases can even generate money in vehicle to grid markets, as I mentioned. I think another thing that we're seeing is that brands like Ford and Nissan and GM, they've all built EVs that can actually serve as backup power for your home. And that's enormous value that goes beyond just the MSRP. It actually turns the vehicle into an asset, right? That precludes the need to purchase a separate backup power generator for the home, which can cost somewhere between $7,000 and $15,000 for the equipment and the install. And look, this is an area where American automakers are generally out in front, of their Chinese counterparts. And I think the last thing to just consider is that a lot of American automakers and Western automakers in general are really prioritizing things like safety, cybersecurity, battery longevity. These are all areas where consumers increasingly value trust and brand loyalty. And so, as I mentioned before, there are concerns certainly about sort of Chinese equipment, Chinese software, and it's not a concern necessarily that consumers are having about their American and European EV brands.
Well, Joseph, we appreciate you joining us today to talk about the EV sector and some of this broad adoption we're seeing here in America. That's Joseph Vellone, CEO of ChargeScape.